Well, thanks, everybody.
No doubt. That was awesome. Taken right off my website. Exactly right.
Like, it's so weird to hear
I know.
a bio about yourself when you're in the room.
Yeah, that's true. That part's true. That's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for having us. This is actually a treat for me. I love to go and speak in my district, especially, and get to see faces. Do you guys live around here? Are some of you close or local at all? Yeah? Okay, cool. So since we have kind of a smaller group, I don't know about you, but at any time that we're talking, or if we bring up a topic that you have a question about, just raise your hand and we'll do this more like a round table. I kind of like that better when there's more of an intimate group, so that we can all just kind of get to know each other and chat a little bit. So, can I go first?
Ladies first.
Okay, beautiful. That doesn't always happen in the house, just so you know. So I appreciate Drew and his chivalry. So I am Holly Jones. I live in Eureka, Missouri. You are sitting in my district. I have all of Ellisville, all of Eureka, a little bitty sliver of Baldwin, and then part of Fenton, the unincorporated part of Fenton, Missouri. And all of the Lone Elk Park. So the mooses and the deer cannot vote, too bad, but I have them nonetheless. So I always like to share my story of how I got into politics, because when we think of politicians, that doesn't really have a great undertone of positivity, right, in just the word. But there are people that get into politics because they want to do something good for their communities, and the Lord led me there. That's the only reason I am here. As you heard in my bio, I have a lot of things that I do. So I'm the director of a charity also for God, Family, Country, and that charity, it started as a charity that assisted in some different things with COVID, whether people lost their jobs or their homes or things due to COVID, and helping them get in touch with attorneys and different things across the country. We kind of built a coalition so that people could fight back against the mandates, right? So I also do that. So I'm busy, right? And I had no plans ever in my life or a thought in my head that I would be getting into politics, let alone run for a state office, right? So, okay. 2 years ago at Christmas time, let's give you the story as quick as I can. 2 years at Christmas time, I'm going to a fundraiser for the current state representative in my seat. I've never been involved in politics too much except watching on TV, forming my own opinions and praying like heck, right? Mm-hmm. So I see my state representative who lives up the street from me at the time, walking her dog. I'm walking my dog. She said, I don't really know her, but she says, hey, Holly, I'd love for you to come to my fundraiser I'm having. It's Christmas time. The country club will be, decorated beautifully. Come on out. I said, great, I'll be there. So my husband pulls me up to the front. I get out and I go walk through the doors. Of course, I've got a big heavy coat on. It's December and it's freezing outside. And I walk through the front doors. And my relationship with the Lord is a little bit different than other people's. When he wants me to do something, he doesn't tap me on the shoulder or whisper in my ear. He kind of shoves me down a flight of stairs and he's like, Jones, this is what we're doing. And then, of course, I'm like, ugh, right? Because sometimes that's not always our plan. So I walked through the front doors of the club and I went to take my coat off and I got this wave of heat over me. And I just couldn't really understand what that was about. And I felt the Lord say to me, you're going to run for state representative. And I was like, hang on a second, right? I feel all the blood rush from my face. Like, I don't have time for this. What do you mean kind of thing? So my husband walks in and I take off my coat and I hand it to him and he's like, what's going on? Like he sees this on my face, right? And I said, I think God wants me to run for state rep. And he says, God doesn't want you to do that because this is going to be a big thing, right? And I'm already busy. So he takes my coat. I said, it's not a big deal. We're here for her. She's still running. She's got another 2 years. If he does, he obviously wants me to do that in 2 years. I'll just start thinking about praying on it. It'll be fine. We go throughout the evening, have a beautiful evening, donate some money. They had actually asked me to run for school board at that time, to which I said, I can't do that because now in the back of my head, I have God saying, I actually have this over here for you, but I can't tell anyone that at the time, right? So that was a no. We leave there. 6 weeks later, I am driving from Columbus, Ohio to Cleveland, Ohio for a tour stop with the Trump sons, Attorney Thomas Renz, Clay Clark. We were doing a Reawaken America tour. We did those every 3 months and then every month for about 3 years. So we just did our last one in North Carolina. So both of my bosses, Dr. Eric Nepute and Attorney Thomas Renz, were speaking at that event, and of course I'm the glue that holds them together. So I'm driving and I'm having church in the car, and I'll never forget this. I'm listening to the song Holy Water by We the Kingdom, and I'm belting it out. I'm one of those people that if you see me at a stop sign, I'm looking like I'm losing my mind in the car. This is worship. This is what worship looks like to me, and I'm getting after it. So I looked down, and I had a missed call from the representative in my district, and I was like, well, that's weird. Why is she calling me? Because, again, we're not really friends. I don't actually know her very well at all. So I called her back and I said, hey, Dottie, it's Holly Jones. Did you mean to call me? And she said, yeah. And she sounded a little somber. And she said, yeah, I did. Do you have a minute to talk? And I said, of course. What's going on? And she said, well, the circumstances in my life have changed, and I'm no longer running for state representative, and the Lord has put your name on my heart as my replacement. And so and still when I tell that story, I get the goosies, right? Because to me, that moment was very defining in my life. It was like a huge stop sign came down, and it was like, stop what you're doing what I say now, right? And so again, he doesn't just give me a little tidbits here and there. It's like a full on, this is what we're doing. So I was just very quiet, and she said, hello, are you there? And I said, I'm here, because I had never even mentioned that to her, right? So I'm looking around like, Jesus, are you in the car with me? What's happening here? And I said, Dottie, you're never gonna believe this. So she said, what do you mean? I told her the story about walking in the club. And then she was silent, and we both have tears in our eyes. And I'm like, first of all, how am I gonna tell my husband? How am I going to tell my family? How am I going to tell my bosses? Because in Jeff City, when you are elected to Jeff City, you're up there 4.5 months a year. So it's a big thing. So she said, you're kidding, there's no way. I'm like, yes, I know this is crazy, but I've got to talk to these people, right, first to make sure this is good. I'll call you back. So of course, instead of calling my husband, I called my bosses, because as you well know, the state representative position pays about $38,000 a year, and in Biden's economy, we cannot afford to live on $38,000 a year. So I had to make sure that I was going to be able to not only be a state representative, but keep my jobs and everything going at the same time, right? It's a huge juggling act. So I called Eric Nepute, who is a huge freedom fighter, and I said, so you're not gonna believe this. I told him the quick story, and he said, yep, let's do it. And I was like, okay, you want to think about it? Do you want to maybe let's talk it over? And he said, no. He's like, let's do it. We're in. If God's telling you to do this, we're in. I said, okay, got to call Tom. So I called attorney Renz, and I said, Renz, this is the issue. And I tell him all about it. And he says, okay, yeah, perfect. Let's do it. I'm like, no, okay, God, hang on a second. So not only did he want me to do this, and he wanted me to follow his instruction and step out in faith, he also moved out every obstacle in my path to do this, right? And he needed somebody with a stone constitution. So when I called my husband, he said, I can argue with you, but I can't argue with God. I guess we're gonna run for state representative. And I said, okay, deal. So I ran. I had 4 months to campaign, and I won by a lot. And my opponent spent $50,000 against me, which in our area, that's a lot. In some areas, it's not. But in our area, that's a lot to spend on a state house race. And the rest has been history. And ever since, I have been fighting tooth and nail, because as you guys know, conservatism isn't the popular thing always. And the state house is a whole different animal. I thought I was going to the House to link arms with my fellow Republicans and the conservatives, and we were going to do big red things, and we were going to work together. And that's certainly not the case, because you can be a Republican and be way over there, and be a conservative and be way over there, and you've got everything in between, trying to work with those folks. So that's my story. I just ran for re-election and won again by a landslide, so I guess that people like what I'm doing. I will keep standing strong as long as I possibly can, but he is my foundation, and so far, so good. I've honestly spent most of my time fighting against the bad stuff. They don't love me up there, let's say, because I don't just go along to get along. And so there's a lot of times where instead of getting my bills heard and good conservative legislation passed, I spent a lot of my time fighting the stuff that we call them rhinos, right, are trying to push through. I don't love that term. I think it's thrown around too much, but that seems to be the term that everyone's adopted. But I fight against all of that. So at least we're doing some good stuff. So that's about me, and I'll keep doing it for as long as he says I have to.
It's a good story.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
I feel so blessed to be able to tell it.
So you had a weekend show, and that's when I first heard your story. And I've had her share it as many times as possible since, I think it's awesome. My story is nothing like that.
Yeah.
At all. So I'm not elected. I just do radio, which can be boring for some, but it's been really a passion of mine for a long time. So I'm 35, and I know
Why are we doing that, first of all? So now, do I have to say that I'm 34?
No,
I'm 34. No, I'm just kidding. I'm 44.
I'm 35. I'm married. I have a almost 3-year-old at home, and they're my pride and joy. They keep me going for sure. But when I get into radio, like I always say, when you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. So I'm really blessed to do what I get to do. But it goes back for me to being a kid. You know, I always loved a microphone, and I always loved country music, but I wasn't a singer, so that was awful. So I'm like, well, what is this gonna do? So, or how is the story gonna come together? I was in 4th grade, Miss Mignerone's class, and I was like, there was a story, you know, a project to go out in our community and tell a story about different type of locations in our city. So I went to Jefferson Barracks. I went to, which is a cemetery. I went to the History Museum, the Art Museum, the cathedral downtown, did a story on it, and that's when I learned I just love telling stories. So I'm like, and this was in the 4th grade. So that kind of stayed with me through school to high school at Afton. That's where I graduated from in 2007. And they had a program of creative film, television production. I'm like, this is right up my alley, so I'm gonna have to stick with the story or stick with the dream. So I become the lead anchor of our school news. It's called Cougar News. And I do that junior and senior year, and that was awesome. Loved, again, telling stories and telling sports reports and student highlights and all that fun stuff. So graduate, go to college. I go to Merrimack on a A+ scholarship, which is great because it was free.
Good.
Do the communications thing, get a radio show doing all of that. KCFV 89.5 The Way was my first gig. Anybody want to guess the time slot they gave me? Nighttime, yes, and it was 11 o'clock at night. So I'm like, well, everyone's gonna be listening. This is gonna be fantastic. I'm like, yeah, no one listened, but the experience was great, right? I get to produce music and throw things together and all that fun stuff. So that was exciting. But I also, at the same time, while doing that, interned for a sports radio station in town, and worked with McGraw-Millhaven at a news talk station in town. So all of that was good experience. Get to Broadcast Center, which is no longer a thing, but it was great during my time, which they would place me wherever they have an opening, whether that's local or in our region, in our state, somewhere in the country. So that's part of their program. You buy into it and you have a job somewhere. But at the time, I started dating a woman that was not my current wife, and that went down a whole different road. So the dream kind of stopped there because I started working for retail stores and doing a whole bunch of different things. But after 10 years of working with Lid Sports Group, there was a position called a social media coordinator. And I'm like, all right, well, let's go into this. So I started making content and putting sales together and let the people, all of our customers know to come to our stores and shop, and they did, and people loved it. So that's where the itch came back. I'm like, God's telling me something here, don't know what, don't know where or how. Then COVID came in 2020, and then I'm like, well, now my store is closed because no one can come to the mall to shop. So I'm like, what are you doing now? So long story short, I get into trucking during the COVID years of 2019, 2020, 2021. And I'm going all over our area. I'm going in St. Louis, I'm going to Chicago, Milwaukee, Omaha, and just doing the over-the-road trucking stuff. But I was listening to radio shows, listening to podcasts, and again, I'm like, I love that kind of thing. So how can I get back to it? Well, luck have it, I was listening to 99.9 KFAV, which is a country music station, and they had an ad come on the radio and said that we're hiring, we're looking for a DJ. I'm like, well, this is great, this is my moment. So I apply. This is June 19th, 2021. And that date's important because my grandpa passed on that day back in 2007 after I graduated, and he was always a guy that inspired me and influenced me to keep going after the dream. So on that day, I get this job, I apply, interviewed, hired on the spot, and start doing this country music thing. And again, I'm creating whatever I want to talk about. I'm talking about, artists and concerts and whatever else is on our little bulletin board thing that we do there. But again, guess the time slot. Anybody want to take a guess? Oh yeah, it was overnights. I was midnight to 6 a.m. So again, nobody's listening. But I was there, I did it, I learned, and then within 2 weeks, they're like, yeah, your passion isn't meant for overnights. We want you in a better time slot. So they gave me middays. And that's 10 to noon, 1 to 3, and every Saturday 10 to 3, and I still do that to this day. So 3 years strong now. While all that's going well, my buddy Rick Driscoll is one of my old district managers from Lit Sports Group. He starts a Christian radio station, and he's in the Cape Girardeau, Missouri area, so in the boot heel of this state. And he goes, I know your story, I know your passion, starting this Christian radio station, I want you to be a part of it. I'm like, all right, cool, let's figure it out. And he goes, well, here's your time slots that you're already on. I can do you Tuesday and Thursday, 12 to 1. Well, every day, Monday through Friday, I have that slot open. So I'm like, all right, let's do it. So that's where I get like a 15 to 20 minute message within music and so on and so forth. And again, that's just an hour that inspires, encourages, and motivates people to kind of go on their way and stay in the fight. So I've been doing that since December of 21. And then, again, I love it. The experience is great. And I'm like, there's still more. Like, I want to do more. And July of 22, Rick and Tracy, our bosses now over there at RealTalk Radio, they had an ad out for this weekend producer. And I'm like, well, that would be great because my Monday through Friday is tied up. I can do all this weekend stuff. And I start doing that. Luck be, have it. I'm then co-hosting the morning show 2 months later. A year after that, I'm the lead host of the show. We bring in Holly over the last year, and it's been crazy ever since. And that time slot is 6 to 9 in the morning. So my given day now is 6 to 9 at 93.3. Then I go to 99.9 for 10 to noon, 1 to 3, and I do the Christian stuff that 12 o'clock hour on 2 days of the week. So it's just wild how that story comes, and the slots are there, and I'm doing my 3 favorite things: talking Christian stuff, talking conservative stuff, and talking country Christian and conservative. So that's kind of my story in radio. And I think politics side of things, I think RealTalk's what I was meant to do, because again, COVID shut down the world for me, shut down the world for everybody. And our bosses were at another radio station at the time, and they were being censored and silenced. They didn't want people to talk COVID. They didn't want to talk the election that, the turnout was of 2020. So they created a radio station. And RealTalk for the last 3 years has been going and growing like crazy. We have listeners in all 50 states, 70 plus different countries. Our social reading on our website, we get like 3 million hits on our website a month. Average listenership is about 135,000 that are consistently listening.
That's crazy.
We're on Facebook and Rumble and X, and our November rating was, I think, 190,000 people tuned in November between not just our shows, but Ryan's show, Peggy's show, Rob Carter, and all of our other folks that are part of the team. So it's just been a wild, wild ride. But I think that's what God has led me to, and that's how it came about.
Yeah, so Drew's being just a little bit modest. He is the mastermind behind the morning crew, and then I had a week. They asked me to do a weekend show, and it was Grace and Grit, because if you know me, I'm a little bit of both of those things. So I wear T-shirts that say "Flip over tables like Jesus," because that's what I'm doing at the Capitol. I'm not standing for this stuff, right? And it has to be a woman to do it. It has to be a woman to do it. I'm in. But it was wild to me that anyone would want to hear what I had to say.
What were your time slots?
This was crazy. My time slots weren't amazing either. I think it was like
Saturday nights at 10.
Saturday nights at 10 and Sundays at 11.
Yeah.
So it's either right before church or right after church or whatever. So you got a little bit of grace from Holly Jones on it's the grid on Saturday night and the grace on Sunday morning maybe. But and then they asked me I started filling in for Dr. Nepute in the mornings, and then Dan and Drew took over, and they said, do you want to be the female in with the morning show? And I don't live close, not that you guys do either, but I don't live close, so I said, I can't do 5 days a week because I also will go back to the Capitol, but I'd love to be in 3 days a week with these guys, and we have such great chemistry.
Yes.
I think I definitely bring a little bit of the female perspective to the dudes. But
that's what we needed.
But the moral of both of our stories, I think, is that God will lead you where he wants you, regardless of what you say, right? And if that's something that you're passionate about, that's even better. I had no idea that I was going to be getting into politics or radio. It still sounds crazy to me when people are like, oh, I listened to you on the radio. I'm like, oh, am I on the radio? Oh, yeah, I'm on the radio.
Uh-huh.
It's crazy.
We feel like we're just in the room together talking, but no, there's a whole lot of people listening.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. But we're able to, through the station and it being an uncensored station, we're able to talk about the Lord and what he's done for our lives and what he's doing in the lives of others. I pray openly and over our listeners all the time. We share scripture. We're able to talk about conservative politics and the fight that I bring to the Capitol and from the Capitol every day of my life, as well as things that Drew and Dan go through and they see on a local level. So it's incredible that we have this platform. And
you mentioned Dan. So Dan Strauss isn't here. He's the producer of the morning show. And what's crazy about Dan is he's a guy that he's been in radio for 40 years. But he was never into politics. He was just the jokester of another show, previous to RealTalk. But Dan was also a teacher at Broadcast Center, and he was teaching when I was there back in 2009. So it's kind of weird how
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Story is now, he's a part of the morning show too. So just all the ways this comes about, that's just God telling an amazing story. One of my favorite scriptures is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, but to give you hope, and a future. And that's my favorite verse in the Bible. I have a plaque of it. It's on my desk, my in-studio desk at home. And it means so much. Plans, we want things that maybe at different times, and maybe we question why things happen, but God's the behind it all, and he's going to do it at his time, his ways, and you better abide by that and have some faith along the way.
It's all about faith. Yeah. I think about that every day, and every time I drive from the station. I'm not an early riser. I don't love it. And these guys are like, well, if you're going to be on the radio with us, you have to be here at like 5:45. And I'm like, in the morning. And so I was like, okay. So that means I'm up driving from Eureka, Missouri to Wentzville at like 4:15. I've gotten used to it. I'm doing good.
Yeah.
Yes, me and all the deer on Highway 109. So that's lovely. I've been in ditches. It's been crazy. But so I joined the show. I'm going out there, and it's just been such a blessing in my life. And we were actually able to have real conversations that. And take calls from listeners too, and in our there's just so much interaction with our people. But the moral of the story is that if you have faith, God is going to lead you where He wants you, no matter what, right? And the plan that He has for you is so big. I just want to be a chiropractor. And that did not happen.
That's not the plan.
That is not the plan. So I'm going to just
Well, you're cracking down Jefferson City. You're not cracking backs, but you're cracking down.
That's right, skulls. Yeah. I'm up there cracking skulls. Yeah. That's right. But we want this to be more of a round table. I mean, we've talked for about 20 minutes. Do you guys have questions for us, whether it's on policy, politics, our walk with the Lord, the station, anything? We're open to it.
And maybe your favorite verses too, because we incorporated scripture in our show because I think that's such an important thing. Sir, back there.
Holly, I really appreciate all your hard work. How you guys do it back and forth, I don't know. But I've got to tell you, there are a large number of us here in this part of the state that are watching what's going on. We're cheering for the Missouri Freedom Caucus.
Thank you.
We had, in fact, these four young ladies right here in the second row.
Yeah.
They were part of about 250 of us that met at Grace Church a couple weeks ago.
I love that.
When Senator Bill Eigel was there to speak, and also Justin Sparks was there.
Yep.
He didn't come to speak, but he was there.
Yeah.
And we are counting on having the Missouri Freedom Caucus lead Missouri out of this mess that we're in right now.
Yeah.
When we finally were able to get Caleb Rowden out of the picture, we took a big sigh of relief. But it appears that that's not really what we can do right now. We have a vote coming up here in 4 weeks?
Mm-hmm. Just about, yeah.
And we desperately need to have a person of faith, like you just mentioned, as our Speaker of the House, which is Justin Sparks. We cannot allow this Amendment 3 to stand. We need to fight it tooth and nail. I don't know what the answer to that is. You could probably help us a little bit on that. But we're counting on a handful of people of faith to stand up against the money people and make sure that we get Missouri back on the track to being a red state. Right now we're teetering. I don't think I have to tell you how we're teetering.
No.
You probably know it better than we do.
I do.
But we want to keep Missouri a red state, and we're very close to losing that if we allow the money to talk from Kansas City. So.
Yeah, so Thank you for bringing that up. I knew that this was going to be a topic. It always is, right? Especially now. Justin is a very good friend of mine. I'm very proud of him for what he's doing and having integrity. I will tell you now, it does not look good for Justin. Okay, it's just where we are. And Justin will tell you that he feels very blessed to have had a voice and to be bringing this up and have a platform to speak on it, even if nothing comes out of it, right? The main thing that will happen no matter what is that we have brought it to the forefront and the attention of leadership that these are the things that we expect. We are not going to back down. We are not going to shut up about Amendment 3. I spoke at churches and in small groups all over educating on Amendment 3. So is everyone familiar? Amendment 3? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. I'm sure you guys probably teach that stuff too, and that's fantastic. We will be working on Amendment 3. The problem is that we've got to get initiative, petition, reform done so that this doesn't happen again.
Right.
That is the most important thing. But they knew when they got Amendment 3 passed that we would have to spend all of our time working on chipping away at Amendment 3 and not working on initiative, petition, and things like that. Because once something is in your Constitution, it's completely manipulated, you've got to take little chunks out of it because it's a whole thing, right? And we're not going to be able to do all of that in one session. It'll probably take us 10 years to do something with this, which is really unfortunate. The Missouri Freedom Caucus, which I am a founding member, it means everything to me. We were vetted from DC all the way down. There's now, Oklahoma just started a Freedom Caucus. So now we have 12, which is fantastic. It may shock you to know that Louisiana is the freest state in this nation. It's not Texas or Florida or Tennessee. It is Louisiana. Louisiana's Freedom Caucus, they did pass 32 of the biggest, reddest conservative bills, and their governor signed every single one of them into law. In Missouri, things are a little bit different. You have a very purple state. You have a lot of red folks that know that they can't get elected as a blue candidate, so they run as a red candidate. And we've got to hold those people accountable. Now the problem too is that they're already there, so we have to figure out a way to work with them until they're not there. And so that's kind of a tricky, there's a finesse to this, which like I said earlier, when I went up to Jefferson City, I thought, man, this is my chance. I'm going to link arms with these folks and we're all going to work together because everyone's the same as me. I was brand new to politics. I had no idea what I was doing. And then at the end of every day, I felt like I'd just been beaten with a baseball bat for the last 15 hours because guess what? Not everybody is like me. There's probably about 4 out of 163, which sounds crazy, right? But your Missouri Freedom Caucus will be working extremely hard. We've got some great new members. We did get a few different senators over into the House members that ran for the Senate. We've got Brad Hudson, who's fantastic, Adam Schnelting. These guys are going to be great. We're so excited to have them over there. And we're going to hold those guys accountable. So while Justin, who is one of my dearest friends, I love the guy to death, it's not looking good. We will still work with him and hold these people accountable, absolutely. So it's going to be very difficult.
Will that be a voice vote?
No, it is a vote on record. We will all cast a vote for either Justin Sparks or John Patterson on January the 8th, which just happens to be my birthday. So I'm like, Lord, I know you have a sense of humor and I really appreciate this. So send me back on my birthday to take this vote and to do the hard stuff, but
So it'll be on record then, however.
It'll be on record, yeah.
Perfect.
And you know what, here's the thing, and I want you to remember this. Make sure that you are calling your representative and asking them, if they do vote for Justin, fine. If they don't vote for Justin, fine. But call them and ask them why. Have a conversation with them. So often now, we have people that will sit behind a keyboard and blast and call names and everything, and they have no idea what these people are going through or why they're doing what they're doing. This has happened to me a dozen different times, mostly people that aren't in the area, when they have no idea what the actual bill is about or why I voted the way that I did, etc. And don't look at the scorecards. The scorecards are crap. It doesn't mean anything about your representative or your senator. They do that based on their own money and their own interests. So, yeah. Yeah.
Well, what we're talking about here is freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what your radio station, that's why I switched listening to 97.1, because I'm not getting truth.
You get an agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And back to our Jefferson City, it boils down to who's running the government. You know, what happened to we the people?
Yeah.
Where is we the people?
Mm-hmm.
They are not educated, and they don't even know what's going on in Jefferson City.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the money that is just, it's a travesty. It's an abomination up there. It's an abomination.
So I love that you use that word, because here's the thing. Satan comes to steal, destroy, confuse,
Yeah.
deceive, right? And evil walks the halls of Jefferson City. You can feel it on certain days,
Oh, I
especially when there are certain people in the building that he can control, bills that are being brought up, all kinds of stuff. It's a tough job, you guys. I had no idea. And if you have a rep or a senator that is willing to work with you, to listen and to explain and to, my grassroots they mean everything to me. I spend 90% of my time doing grassroots stuff. I mean, because it is we the people, right? And you talk about the money. The problem with the money is because I've taken lobbyist money too, and I'm very picky about which lobbyist money that I take, right? Because I'll run bills for the Missouri Humane Society. I'm a huge animal lover, and we've got issues with animals in our state. But we have to take money from somewhere because it costs money to run a race. So you're in between a rock and a hard place. If I have a primary opponent that comes out pretending that she or he is more conservative than I am, and they've got $100,000 and I've got 10, money buys elections. Unfortunately, it does. And I've had fundraisers where 100 people show up and I walk out of there with $1,600. That's going to do nothing for me. So it's very, very difficult when we talk about money. I had no idea what it costs to run races. The Senate races are $200,000 to $300,000 to run a Senate campaign. Gubernatorials, we're talking $1 million, right? $2 million, $3 million. It's insane. So if you don't have the money to fight against your Democrat opponent or a primary opponent, I mean, you're really in bad shape. So I 100% agree, the money is a problem, but until we can get citizens to support their candidates, we have to take money from somewhere. Otherwise, the good conservative Republicans that you have voted for, they won't be there because they'll give the money to somebody else. It's a very tricky kind of finesse that has to be.
I can see you taking money.
Yeah.
I can understand that. But whenever they are putting pressure on you to vote otherwise from your constituents, that's wrong.
Oh, absolutely, and
That's wrong.
that's never happened to me. You know what the funny thing is that people will say to me, I've gotten death threats before, but nobody has said that they'll withhold money from me for my campaign or anything because they know that's not going to work. But there are people that, I mean, I've sat on the floor of the House, watched someone take a vote, and then get a not a phone call or a text or whatever, and then leave and then change their vote. So they've walked out of the House and changed their vote based on whoever they just spoke with. It's really a sad thing, and money does control a whole lot of it. But if you do feel like, again, I just want to reiterate this and make the point that if you feel that you have a good rep that listens to you, that votes with you 99% of the time, no one is ever going to make you fully happy. You're not going to be happy with every single vote that they take, but talk to them about it. Ask them why they did it. It's so important to have good communication, and that's why we have an assistant to take the phone calls, and I give everybody my cell phone, which is not the best idea, but honestly, reach out to them and talk to them, because I do agree with you. It happens all the time.
Yeah, money's a great thing, but it's also a horrible thing
Yeah,
in politics.
for sure, yeah.
We don't have enough good guys, if you will.
That's right, yeah.
Or gals, right? That are willing to fight the good fight. Yes,
Has it
ma'am.
always been pay to play, or has it just got more corrupted? I mean, how is it,
When did that happen?
So honestly, that's never been a thing for me. Do you want to talk about HRCC? Because Justin talks about HRCC a lot. Do you know what that is? So the House Republican Campaign Committee is the organization that is tasked with getting Republicans reelected into seats and not turning seats over to Democrats, okay? That organization we are asked to donate our money that we raise if we don't need it. So I'm in a pretty safe district. I won this last election by a lot against a Democrat. And so, they will ask us, with extra money that you have, will you donate it to help your fellow Republicans stay in seats? Guys, whatever Republican is up there that you don't like, they're still better than the Democrat that's trying to come in. I promise you that. Which is sad to say, but it's true. Because these Democrats aren't the old school Democrats. These are the guys that want to change kids' genders, want them to, all the Amendment 3 stuff, right? They want to hike your taxes. I mean, it's crazy stuff. So the Republican, sadly, is still better. And unfortunately, nobody wants to run for office anymore because guess what? They hate you half the time. They scream at you. They send you nasty. I played a voicemail on the air the other day of a gentleman who's calling me every name in the book, telling me I was treasonous and all that. I mean, it's terrible stuff that this is not for the faint of heart, right? But at the same time, the Republican that's running, even if they're more moderate, is better than the crazy Democrat. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. So talk to your reps about how they're voting, what you want to see, and that kind of thing. What was the other part of that question?
Has it always been like this, or did it just get more corrupted? Like Faulkner,
Yeah.
I know took a lot of money from WashU, and Patterson was related to that. And
So
Shelton
Patterson is a physician. He is backed by the hospital associations, the pharmaceutical companies, the teaching colleges with, WashU, SLU, these kinds of things. He is, and of course they're going to back him. He's a part of the establishment of medicine, right?
And he took the Hippocratic Oath, right?
He did, to do no harm, yes, and unfortunately that doesn't mean anything anymore. And I'm not just talking about Patterson, that's all physicians,
the
unfortunately.
Republican platform means nothing either. It's like they're working for whoever they get the money for, not the people whatsoever.
Yeah, I do promise you it does to some of us. It really does to some of us. But some of us are there for different reasons, right? I want to go back to HRCC really quick because this is the organization that everyone thinks is corrupt. We had a director of that I did not like at all. So for my first 2 years, they asked me, will you donate? Because I'm in a safe seat. It makes sense for them to ask me for money to keep other Republicans in contested districts to keep Missouri red because I don't need all that money. I am in a safe seat. I will win against my Democrat by a large amount, right? For the first 2 years, I said, no, I'm not giving you anything. I don't trust this system. I don't know where your money's going. I don't know who these candidates are. You're basically just taking my money and pushing it forward through whatever means you want. And I don't even know who the candidate is, right? I don't know if they're good or bad or what have you. So I said no for 2 years. This year came around. John Patterson, this is before Justin ever even came on the scene, right? John Patterson and I have been building a relationship for a long time. He's helped me push through the anti-organ harvesting bill. Do you know that in Missouri, our state-funded insurance would cover organs from China for transplant, forcibly harvest from prisoners of conscience? So I ran that bill last year, got it out of committee, got it out of the House, and didn't have time to get through the Senate. Unfortunately, I'll be running it again and filing it again tomorrow. But John Patterson helped me get that through. He believed in that bill, even though the hospital association, and I'm not sticking up for Patterson, I'm just telling you the story. Even though the hospital association and the insurance lobbyists slammed him. Because guess what? That's a moneymaker for them, right? So HRCC this year comes to me and they say, is there any way that you could help us out? We've got this, and this. We were slated to lose 10 seats this year, you guys. 10 to Democrats. That's bad. We lose our supermajority. We don't want that, okay? If we lost 10 seats, we would be in severe trouble in Missouri. So I said on one condition, I will help out. I talked to Patterson about this because remember, we did take a vote, a preliminary vote, to bring him in as our speaker. This was back in the fall, or the spring, sorry. I talked to him about it. I said, here's what I want for my money. I want to know who it's going to. I want to make that known, and I'm going on record as saying this is the candidate that I want my money going to. Give me a list of candidates that are in the worst shape. Well, right here, our partner right here in Chesterfield, Ben Keithley, is another Freedom Caucus founding member who is a very dear friend of mine, who's an attorney, and he's brilliant. And I need him there with me because I have a lot of legal questions. And he's a Freedom Caucus member. I said, I will give you $10,000 to go to Ben Keithley. The reason, people say, why don't you just give it to Ben Keithley's campaign? Our local campaigns, we don't have the same resources and speed that an organization like HRCC does, having these people right on speed dial to get this stuff done. So I said, I will give you $10,000. I knew I didn't need it. My polling numbers were beautiful. Praise Jesus. And so I said, I want this to go to Ben Keithley. And they said, okay, thank you. So I did give money this year to HRCC, and I would do it again to save Ben Keithley. I would do it again to save Melanie Sinnott in Springfield, or Brad Christ in Fenton. And these guys are in really like 50-50 districts. So I mean, some of our Republicans won by 150 votes. You guys, that's crazy.
Yeah.
We've got to keep those folks there. So it probably always has been pay to play. The difference now, since, for forever, is we have social media, and you can talk about everything openly. And so people are just much more aware of the situation now, I think. I'm sorry, I'm taking like all the time.
You are okay.
Just because pharmaceutical has gotten so powerful, they own the media, they own everything.
Pharmaceutical owns everything, yes.
Right.
But that's biblical, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Pharmaceutical owns everything. The Pfizer lobbyist hates me. I'm totally okay with that. There are just certain people that I'm just really fine with being hated by. But Pfizer, you have to think about it. They've got a headquarters right here in Chesterfield. Bayer Monsanto's got right here in Chesterfield. I mean, we've got a big presence in this state of the big ag, big pharma, big education. I mean, we've got some serious players in this state. And I will tell you, even the John Pattersons of the world that are much further left than I am, he's better than the Democrat that was running against him, which is sad, right? But these districts, like a district like John Patterson, he barely won, barely squeaked it out. And so you're in a, especially the cities, right? Thank God for the Electoral College, but especially in the cities where you've got a 49, 51, or barely 50.5% margin, or 0.5% margin, it's crazy. So I know, it's really hard.
What's the chances of IP reform?
So they've been trying to do that for 8 years,
I know.
long before I got there.
Yeah.
The issue with IP reform is money. Yeah, it is, and almost everything comes down to money. But I think what has happened is that even if Justin Sparks doesn't win, he has caused a movement,
Yeah.
which is, oh gosh, how much time do we have? So I love what he's done, and he's opened people's eyes to leadership issues and things like that, right? And I'm so grateful for that. The IP issue is many people make deals. They make deals, and IP passed out of the House, not soon enough, because when we go in there to Winter Caucus and we have a meeting, we say, these are the things that we care about. These are our top 5 priorities, and we all agree, and we're like, yeah, that's what we're gonna do, and we wanna get this done. And then you get up there, and those are still the priorities, but they don't come up till the last 2 weeks of session, right? Why is that? So the one thing that Justin has been able to do is put enough pressure on not only John Patterson, but our incoming Speaker Pro Tem, and our Majority Floor Leader, who, by the way, is really great. I think he's gonna do a great job. Alex Riley, out of Springfield, I think that he's gonna do a great job, we'll see. But we've gotta get it done sooner. So there are a lot of people and a lot of Freedom Caucus members that are not voting for Justin Sparks because we've already been working so long with John Patterson. You have to remember, when we preliminarily vote on a speaker prior to, we've been building a relationship and working with this individual on our priorities and things that matter to us for a couple of years, right? And so, not that I'm telling, I think it's fantastic that Justin's disrupted the system. Absolutely. I did that when I came in and ran my mRNA bill, and I rattled the windows of the House with the phone calls from all across the country and the globe, which was fantastic, by the way. But it didn't work because reps, they don't want to be bullied. And so even though I had thousands of phone calls going into offices every month, I couldn't get it out of committee. And that was just informed consent so that you knew what you were eating. And the COVID vaccine wasn't in your food, right? So what he's done is fantastic. Love the guy, love his integrity. But even if it doesn't happen and he's not our speaker, our leadership has been put on notice and they said, this is what we'll do. Now that's up to us to hold them accountable to that and make sure that they do it, right? So it's always been pay to play, I think, but it's getting to be more now. Everyone's just talking about it. And this is the last thing I'll say on that. Grassroots are more powerful now than ever. I mean, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah.
They're fantastic. Grassroots have mobilized. I would like to see it to be more young people. It's usually like my generation or older than me that have gotten so involved. But thank God for them. But yeah, the grassroots they're a force now, and it's awesome.
I will say the younger people are very involved, but they're busy with their jobs just like we were.
Yeah.
Because they call me and say, do something, and that's the only reason I keep showing up everywhere, because they keep saying, you gotta do something. I'm like, okay.
So what would it take for we the people to come up to the Capitol with signs, pass IP reform? We need Elliot Davis to come in and say, pass IP report, because, what does it take to get something done? Besides Rex Singfeld.
Oh, Rex. Yeah, he loves me too.
I bet.
Yeah.
We were there with the IP.
Yeah.
We were there in
Yeah,
February.
to say,
So
I know you guys are there.
What happened? It wasn't could you give me a scenario? Do you not name names or anything on snafus?
So the IP reform, we passed it out of the House just late, right? They held on to it till late. And then when it went to the Senate, they wouldn't bring it up. And the problem, you guys, is that there are so many conspiracy theories, if you will, because even reps, there's 163 of us. I don't know everything that's going on in that House, right? And I don't know everything that's going on in the Senate. But you hear things that are, this guy did this, or this senator did this, or they held it up over here, or what have you. But somewhere along the lines, somebody was probably paid not to make it happen. Now, I have no idea who. I wish I did. But unfortunately, we don't. The House passed it out. The Senate could have taken it up and passed it in those last couple of days. They could have.
Yeah, you did your job.
We did our job. We should have done it quicker. We should have done it way sooner. We should have done the first week. Because that was the most important thing to us. That's what we should have done. And we didn't. But there's also, it's the wildest thing that you've ever seen. There are certain things that you say, we're not going to do this until you guys do this, because you've got to have something to hold against them. Because if they get what they want, then they're not going to do what you need them to do. It's crazy. I mean, it's literally like being married to like 300 people, and everybody's fighting all the time, and they're talking behind each other. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's money, it's ego.
It is.
And that's what controls it.
They're going after the Second Amendment, you know that.
That's next.
That will not fly. Just so you know, that will not fly in Missouri. Missouri will stand for Second Amendment. We have the reps, even the moderate reps, are not going to let
the judge rephrases it.
Yeah, because
Like he did
because
A3.
yeah.
Molly, can I just clarify what you just said
Yeah.
in just one sentence?
Mhm.
The money sunk IP reform.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And the fight
Because
goes
that
on.
is not the conspiracy, that's true.
No, the conspiracy part about it is who did what to take what to say what to sink it, right?
Okay.
Because somebody along the lines had something involved in that,
Okay,
unfortunately.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have two questions, one for each of you.
Okay.
What role does fundraising play in being in house leadership?
Do you mean that they fundraise much more than like just a house rep? If you're running for leadership, do they fundraise more?
Yes, what does it take to be the leader that, on the top rung or whatever of house leadership? Does fundraising play a role in that in terms of who gets to be what?
Yeah, I mean, it could. So when you come in as a freshman, so we're all in like classes, right? So it's freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. I'm going in as a sophomore. This is my second term. But you're kind of in a class. So I came in with about 45 other reps. We were kind of a big class. And very early on, when you are in the House or elected, you will start to pick out who you think is going to be the speaker from your class. Because if we stay 8 years, some of us will, some of us won't. But if we stay 8 years, there's one of us that's going to be the next speaker from our class as we get to our senior term, right? And it starts to happen very quickly where people will start to pick out a couple of prospects, if you will. I'm not on that list, just so you know. I'm way too loud and obnoxious to them. But where they will start helping them fundraise, giving them money, cultivating that relationship. So when they get there, their interests are protected, right? So it's a fundraising, especially as you go through your tenure in the House, it's a big deal if they're looking at you for leadership. But remember, your leadership is elected by your fellow representatives. So John Patterson's class, for the most part, they were the ones that chose him. And then as we all came in, He had to build those relationships with all of us too for us to get that vote. But they started looking at him very early on in his career in the House. So it's term limits. Thank the Lord.
Second question, and this is directed to Drew, but you can both answer if you want. You guys give a lot of news and notes and jokes and the rest of the terms that you guys use. That's true. My question is, just to share with the folks here, where do you find reliable stories, reliable news, reliable reports, reliable perspectives?
Oh yeah, no, it's a great question, because when you get into media, you want to cover both sides. That's when I grew up. I'm watching the nightly news, and I'm thinking I'm getting both sides from Tom Brokaw or whatever on Channel 5. But as you learn, they kind of push with the agenda. So I look at local stories, of course, for Missouri, like Channel 2 or Channel 4, Channel 5. Then I go to the bigger sites, maybe Gateway Pundit or Breitbart, just different.
Epic Times.
Yeah, oh yeah. I look at different sites and kind of see what their story is, and kind of get balance from the mainstream media, and kind of come to a somewhat agreement and give the truth to the listener. It's not easy work to pull all the stories. I mean, we do a 3-hour show, and I would say probably 2 hours of my day after I'm on the air, you're already looking for stories for the next day. And then you have a story pen, and then more stories breaks, and then you have to recycle one. So on my news tab, on my computer, and I think Ryan can probably testify to this too, we probably have 24 stories maybe that are pinned, but then you don't even get to half of them because something else broke that you have to talk about and kind of disclose on air to the people. So you just have to do your research and do it justice. So
And we pray, along that same line, we pray for discernment to understand what's real and what isn't, right? Because we are constantly being deceived, not only as an elected official, as radio host, as just citizens. The media wants you to be so confused all the time that you're not turning to the Lord for your information, right? We have to pray about discernment and what is real. So a lot of we both talk about all the time, the mainstream media is garbage. So they're, like he said, they're like Breitbart and Gateway Pundit and Epic Times and different news outlets that are unbiased, that are just giving you the reality of the situation. Yeah. So it's...
And I would also say education is power. So for these kiddos in the room, I mean, you're going to have money, and we need more leaders to come join the Freedom Caucus, quite frankly.
That's right.
But,
I expect all of you to run for office.
Please. Then we might get some good things done here in the show me state. But education is power. A3 failed because the media was telling you one side and not telling you all the facts. And it was the side that they wanted you to know. I was talking on the air today. I was at an event last night, and they said, yeah, I voted for A3. I'm like, well, why would you do that? And they're like, well, because of this reason. I'm like, but here, what about this reason? What about that reason? There's 5 reasons I can give you right now why your one doesn't make sense. And they're like, well, where'd you get this info? I'm like...
The language of the amendment.
That's the problem.
Nobody
right?
educates themselves. Nobody reads it.
That's the biggest problem.
And it was written to be so vague that people really didn't understand it, right? And so I did a almost 3-hour conversation with Senator Ben Brown in Eureka at Ignite Church. And there's about 100 folks there, and most people had no idea what was going on in that, right? They had no idea, because it's written that way to make you confused. So the more confused you are, the better it sounds, to be honest. And it's really, really sad.
Can I just say something? This lady knocked on 1,000 doors.
Oh.
I know it.
That's amazing.
Not only that,
I voted for you.
brainwashed. We have this thing where you're free to think whatever you do, whatever you want, you know what I mean? We have this layer of brainwash, and then everybody's like, well, and like I said, they use the term pro-choice, which is not, it's not pro, it's pro-woman is what it is, but you go through all that and you realize that a lot of people I talked to said they're gonna vote for it. My niece stood up with an aborted baby outside the library, and people would walk past and go, I'm still voting for it. Like, they're just, it's like, the brainwash is very thick in our country.
It's mass formation psychosis. It blankets the United States, and the rest of the world gets very different information than the United States does, and it's because we're free.
I mean, you can tell people information, and that's only part of the equation. You know what I mean? And I was gonna say, do you guys get the New American magazine or any of the John Birch stuff? It's really good.
Yeah,
We had it
Yeah.
on the, Saxton, is it?
I think so.
On the show, I guess
John
a
Birch.
while back. Yeah. Great resource right there,
Right,
Yeah.
right.
100%.
Yeah,
So, a couple things.
yeah.
With Amendment 3, and have you seen any of the pre-filed bills to see what's coming up to fight it?
I've seen language that hasn't been filed yet. Brian Seitz out of Branson. Are you familiar with Brian? Of course. My really good buddy. I can't get him on board with chemtrails. He's still thinking those are all contrails, but oof, love him. He's also a Freedom Caucus member. Brian is very outspoken on babies and guns. And he stands up on the House floor and he says, "shall not be infringed," and then he sits down. It's really great. But he is running a bill. I have not read all of his language. I'm not sure if he pre-filed it or not, but he's got a bill. I trust what's going to be in his bill for sure. And there are a couple of others. I have been approached for carrying one of those bills. Now, I said, I will never give you my word to carry a bill unless you send me the language and I read it first, because you're not going to pull one over on me ever. But yeah, there have been bills that they are working on. They're working with legal and research and getting the wording correct, because that was the problem, right? With Amendment 3 was absolutely abhorrent. The language was just absolutely so vague that it could include everything under the sun. I mean, that was the entire kitchen sink when it came to transgender surgeries, abortions, no medical malpractice coverage. I mean, it was awful. So yeah, there are some really good conservatives that are working on that stuff. Schnelting is one of them too in the Senate.
Are you, what other pre-filed bills have you seen that you're excited about?
Well, I'm not really excited about any of them. Brian has one that's similar to, it's about babies. I don't know if it's really going to do the Amendment 3 thing, but he's got another one that's coming. I believe in less government. So let's go pre-file 40 bills today, among 3 people. I've never pre-filed a bill. I think that I file a few bills that I think will either help or fix. I just don't believe in throwing all these bills in 2 years in a full House election cycle. We go through about 3,200 bills filed. That's
Many of them are similar language.
yes,
And
it's
Bailey already working on what happened? Isn't he?
he
already
is
saying, like,
he
you know,
is he's already working on it. He's doing some good stuff. Yeah, I have faith that he'll continue to fight that also. So, but yeah, there's so many bills filed, and I don't believe in filing just to file, right? I mean, when I came up there as a freshman, I spent my first year, I spent my first 6-8 weeks watching and listening and seeing what other people were doing way wrong before I ever even filed anything. Because I was like, the people of Missouri don't want you to govern them more. They want you to leave them alone. I mean, we're supposed to be free, and then your reps go up there and file all kinds of bills. Half of them you have no idea what it does. Half of them are lobbyist bills. So I'm slow to react unless it's something extreme, and I don't file a ton of legislation. And more often than not, thank the Lord that He gave me the discernment that He has, because we really fought against CBDC my first year, and I rallied the troops and the masses on that one, because I was like, and they're like, no, this isn't what that is. And I was like, it says it right here. They like to pull that whole dumb girl card, but that doesn't work with me.
What happened to court yesterday, do you know? Does anybody know?
I don't know exactly.
haven't
I don't
ruled on
want
it
to, yeah, I don't want to speak exactly to it without knowing 100%.
I have a fun question for
Yeah.
Drew. We have a place in the country, so that's where life is free.
Yeah.
Amen.
And Trump signs everywhere, and watch out for my motorcycles. But Cowboy Church, are you familiar with it at all?
No.
I see some cowboy churches, and I would
I
imagine
love
music
cowboy
and
churches.
Christianity for you.
I think it'd be great, but
Yeah.
I've never been to a cowboy church.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. That's fine. Well, I see them, I saw them on a couple of them, yeah, and they're
Right.
great.
They are great. Yep.
I think the bottom line, though, is session will be interesting. I think it'll be a busier session than this past session, and
Yeah.
you'll be there, and you'll be recapping it for us on the show and
Will.
educating people, every step of the way. So It's, the fight goes on, as they say. But as far as pre-filing bills go, I mean, there's a couple, we talked yesterday about the cell phone deal with students.
Yeah, the cell phones in schools.
There's the, I think it was Gregory who put out, who was a elect, who just
Yeah,
was elected.
Senator-elect.
Talking about
He's your senator up
illegals.
here.
Yeah. Doing that almost like give $1,000 if you catch an illegal, and you can actually get rid of them. So, I mean, there's some things to watch.
Well, that works exactly, but
I
I'll have to
know.
look at that one.
Right. But it'll just be something to watch, and we'll cover it as it unfolds each week, starting January 8th.
Just my advice is to be engaged and to connect with your reps. We are people. We volunteer to do this. To tell you how little I knew about politics way back when, not when I got elected, but I didn't even know that reps got paid. That was way back when. I mean, when I ran for office, I did. But a lot of people don't have a clue about state politics. So talk to your folks and engage with them and ask them to sit down and have a conversation. I meet people for coffee all the time. We're just going to have a conversation, right? But definitely talk to them and be kind. It is really hard some days. You guys know you're up there a lot. I see you.
But thanks for being there.
Yes,
I remember on the
absolutely.
radio in the spring saying, we said, go to Jefferson City, there's going to be this rally, and people showed up.
Yeah.
And there was multiple rallies. So when we say get engaged and do your part, at least you're out there, doing it. We just
And
need
you guys
more.
showed up for the Freedom Caucus when we announced and we had our kind of kickoff. And I sobbed for like half that afternoon because I was like, these people are here because they need a voice and they care so much that we're doing this. And that was like totally eye-opening for me. It was amazing. So you are appreciated. Grassroots is such a huge, huge deal. So, and I expect to see all of you guys on the ballot running for office.
So how do you get a pay raise?
We have to legislate one.
Okay.
And
That wouldn't go over very well. I mean.
not generally, no.
Yeah, good luck with that one.
But okay, so let me just say this as a lesson, because you're right.
We could file a bill and say, we want to raise your salary.
Yeah, so here's the thing. The other reason, so in all 50 states, the legislative pay is completely different.
Yeah.
There's some states where your session is all year round. Some states it goes every other year. Some states they pay you 90 grand a year. Some states get 15, right? So we're not like getting nothing, but at the same time, if you want quality folks
Right.
who are going to give it everything, I have to have 2 other jobs. I can't live off of $38,000 a year, right? So I have to do other things. So I give this as much as I possibly can, but I also have to work. So if we wanted quality individuals that could give everything that they've got to this, we would have to pay them more because they call it a part-time job. Guess what? That's not true.
Mm-mm.
My phone rings at 11 o'clock at night. I mean, it's not part-time. We're only in Jeff City part-time. So that's hard too, right? Because we're not paying folks enough to do it as their full-time job. I don't know, unless it's the retired old man caucus, they, no offense, anyway, because they can be there and be retired and it's kind of like their gig. But if you've got a family or if you are younger and you've got bills upon bills, you've got to have other jobs, so that's tough.
Does it work the same as the national level, where you can vote in a bill, but it can't happen until after an election? So,
What do you mean? Like if I can't file anything until filing
like in the
opens?
national
For your own
level?
pay.
I'm sorry.
What's that?
For your own pay.
For your own pay. You
Oh.
can vote in a bill, but it doesn't take effect immediately. It's after.
Yes,
next election.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it wouldn't happen immediately.
So you're not
anyway,
voting
'cause-
for your own because you don't know if you're going to make it or not.
Well, that's, yeah. God willing, right?
So,
I keep waiting for him to say, okay, well done, good and faithful servant. You can be done now.
Yep.
That's not what he's saying.
Move to the next project.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. Thank you guys for having
Yeah,
us.
it's been fun.